Alright, welcome back to Everyday Race. Today's going to be another update on my Kawasaki ZX10R build. So I finally finished up building the ECU for my bike, and this is a factory Mitsubishi ECU that came on my bike. And a lot of you probably going to be saying, well, can't you just put a power commander or a Bazaz or any of that piggyback? Well, I I could put the piggybacks, but the thing is that this is a 12-year-old ECU. It's out of a 2005 Kawasaki ZX10R. If they haven't improved it, the 2004 model had the same ECU, so it's a 13-year-old ECU. And I don't know if any of you used a phone from 14 years ago, but it's probably going to be just as good as the CCU, you know. It's old, it's slow, and it's not really capable of much, in my personal opinion. So, if you put a power commander or another piggyback with this CCU, it's only going to be as fast as its main brain, as this ECU. So you can put a brand new piggyback on it. It's going to modify parameters. Let's say it's going to modify how much the injectors are going to stay open, or what the ignition, when the spark plugs are going to fire. But it's only going to be as good as this ECU. So the limiting factor is going to be the ECU. And I just didn't feel like taking a gamble with forced induction and stock 13-year-old ECU. Another option was ECU flash, which was I thought about it for a moment. I sent the company a couple of messages a while back, probably like 3-4 years ago, if the ECU would be able to control boost, meaning I could replace my factory map sensor with 2, 3, 4 bar map sensor, and if the ECU would be able to work with it, kind of like Suzuki ECUs for second generation Hayabusas, or 2007 2008 GSXR 1000. Those ECUs with a flash are able to control boost, give you boost by gear, and all kinds of cool stuff. So I was kind of hoping that the company would do something similar to the Kawasaki ECU, but it wasn't the case. So, plus it was kind of pricey. I think back then they wanted $800 or $900 for the flash kit, because I would want to modify. I would want to tune the ECU every time I'm at the racetrack. I wasn't gonna pay somebody to flash my ECU once, because that wouldn't work for me. Because I'm constantly I'm gonna be changing ignition timing. I'm gonna be testing different fuels, maybe different spark plugs, different boost, different turbos, different pistons, different camshafts. I would have to get the kit, and they sent me a message and said that they had no future plans to add boost control. So that kind of put the stop to using this ECU. And even if they did, it would still be a 14-year-old ECU. So what I decided to do is go with the MegaSquirt, MicroSquirt, standalone ECU. And here it is. It ain't pretty, but the ECU isn't 14 years old, so it's a whole lot faster and a whole lot better than the stock ECU. It's also fairly cheap. This ECU started its life as a MegaSquirt module, which was, I think it was roughly $270. It could have been more or less. I think shipping was like $5-7, so you know it was between $270 and $300. So it was a pretty good deal, in my opinion. Then I decided to add ignition control because the MegaSquirt is only able to control smart coils, meaning ignition coils with igniters already in them. And I really wanted to use factory ignition coils that came on my bike. And those are called dumb coils. Not because they're stupid, but because they have to have igniter to work them. And MegaSquirt was only able to provide a 5-volt signal, which is it's called logic control. So I bought 4 BIP 373 ignition transistors. They're basically transistors, and I put them inside here. You can see I mounted them to the lid of the ECU. You see 4 screws. So the lid is actually going to be, it's going to keep them cooled, even though I don't think they're going to get hot at all. I also ended up buying the plug and play, not the plug and play, but I bought the ECU connectors, so I could just plug this ECU in my stock harness, and I'd be ready to go. I didn't feel like rewiring the whole bike. That was just not in my plans. So next, I added 5 extra pins. I added connector. It's a serial connector for my computer. That way I can plug my computer and be able to adjust my ECU. I also got this separate ground that's going to go to the frame of my bike. That way I don't have to worry about the factory 18 gauge 1 ground wire that was just wasn't going to be good enough, because this ECU is going to need to work with a lot more current in this ECU, and I didn't feel like gambling. I didn't feel like frying my factory wiring harness, so I added this ground lug. It's going to provide ground for my ignition, and it's going to provide ground for a couple other things. So I just wanted to play it safe, and it's really easy to hook up. So it's, you know, maybe a couple of minutes, put a wire here and attach it to the bike, and that's it. So next, I've got this 5 pins, and I've already marked them. That way I don't forget what they're for. Number 1 pin is going to be for my wideband sensor. That's where the ECU is going to receive 0 to 5 voltage from my wideband sensor. That way it'll know what the airflow mixture that's in the engine, in the combustion chamber. So it's pretty self-explanatory. This ECU doesn't have any closed loop oxygen sensor control, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to stand alone. Pin 2 is going to be launch control. Basically, as soon as that pin sees ground, it's going to limit my RPM to whatever I choose to limit. If I set my clutch to lock up at 5,000 RPM, I'm going to set the launch control, sometimes it's called 2-step, to let's say 4,700 RPM. That way I can go wide open throttle, and my bike will not move because the clutch won't be locking up. So that's another option that was possible with the ECU flash, but it was only one option. Next, pin 3 is for my knock control. I'm going to use it for something else besides knock control, but if I decide to use a knock sensor on the bike, it's another really good option for force induction, or for engine that has some kind of force induction. If it's going to see any kind of knock that's going on, and knock is pretty much pre-ignition, it would retard the ignition timing to whatever I set it to. There are many different ways I can do it, but this pin is going to be for either that or a manual ignition retard. Is that what I'm planning to use it for? And I might use it for poor man's traction control, or basically I'm going to retard timing as soon as I let the clutch out or disengage my launch control, so the power that's going to go to my rear wheel isn't going to be all at once. It's going to gradually increase to lessen the tire spin. Next, I got the pin number 4. This is going to be for my factory gear position sensor. So it's something that I forgot to put in my plug and I couldn't get to it afterwards. So I'm just going to run it separate. No big deal. And last but not least is pin 5 is going to be for my boost control. Basically, I'll be able to hook up air valve solenoid, and I'll be able to control my boost on the bike. I'll have option to do open loop and closed loop. So those are there was another reason why I decided to go with this ECU, because this ECU can control boost. So another strike for factory ECU. And it's fairly light. It's lighter than this ECU. Actually, let me grab a scale and find out exactly what the differences are. Alright, so I got my scale up here. Let me weigh factory ECU. Let's do it in ounces. So it's 13.8 ounces for a stock ECU. Next, I'm going to weigh my MegaSquirt ECU. And this one's 10 ounces and 10.95 ounces. So it's actually lighter than factory ECU, which is, you know, it's a plus in my opinion. Next, you're going to say, well, it's bulky and this and that. Well, it's actually, it's about the same size. Not too bad. And my new ECU is a little bit longer, and obviously it's going to be taller, but I have a lot more room on my bike. So besides this ECU being able to have a wideband launch control, knock control, and boost control, the main reason I replaced this ECU with it is because I'm able to control big injectors. I'm able to replace my factory sensors like air temperature and map sensor with aftermarket sensors. They're able to see boost and measure air temperature a lot quicker and a lot better than the stock sensors could. And technically I could replace most sensors with aftermarket sensors, even though really have no need for it, but you know, it's kind of a nice option in case some of the sensors will become obsolete. I'm not going to be stuck with a broken bike or searching all over the place for possibly used options. And another thing is that I'm able to control fuel, I'm able to control ignition timing, I'm able to set the rev limiter to whatever I want. I'm able to control my idle. I'm able to control pretty much anything I want with this ECU that cost me probably less than $400 for enclosure, all the connectors, the module, the connectors here. I mean, $400 for a standalone ECU. It's can't really beat the price. I couldn't buy anything else that would be able to do so much as this cheap, small, actually pretty basic, one of the basic standalone ECUs available on the market. And I'm gonna hook it up in the next video just to show you how easy it is to hook it up. Actually easier than hooking up a power commander or ECU harness. All the piggybacks and, you know, because it's just two OEM connectors, ground lug, and it's ready to go. But I'm gonna make a video to show you when I'm gonna hook it up. So that's gonna be all for today. Once again, thank you for watching, and come back for more updates.